Hello everyone, my name is Anya Hawkins and this is a complete video tutorial for one of my designs, Barren Strawberry sweater. First I will tell you a little about the design and I will show you some footage of me modeling different samples of it, so you can see for yourself whether you like the look and the fit of Barren Strawberry sweater and whether you want to knit it for yourself. And then we will knit one together step by step. I will demonstrate every stage of the process and every technique in great detail, and using chapters navigation you can find specific points of the tutorial that you need at the moment, or you can start knitting together with me and then just stop and return later whenever necessary. Keep in mind though that I'm a continental knitter and I will demonstrate techniques in that way. And the PDF pattern for Barren Strawberry sweater you can get for free in my Ravelry store or on my Ko-fi page. The links as usual are down below in the info box. And please consider supporting me on Ko-fi, because it's thanks to your donations that I can keep this pattern available for free for everyone. My original sample of Barren Strawberry sweater looks like this. It's lightweight, oversized, flowy, breathable and very comfortable. I used fingering weight alpaca yarn for background and synthetic yarn of the same thickness for flowers. I wanted this specific lemon color and I could only find it in synthetic. This construction will work well with yarns that are light in weight. I wouldn't recommend using something heavy like cotton or superwash wool. The sweater then may stretch out under its own weight. And you don't have to use this color combination. You can take any two contrasting colors and end up with a sweater that is unique to you. For my tutorial sample, the one I will demonstrate all the techniques on later in this video, I chose different background color, dark green, but the same yellow for flowers. And the vibe turned out very different, bold and intense, which just shows you how much you can change the final look according to your own aesthetics. Let's knit Barren Strawberry sweater together. For it you will need yarn, sport weight or light decay weight yarn of two colors. This will be my background color, this will be my Intarsia flowers color. Approximate yardage you can get for each size in a pattern. We will also need needles, straight or circulars for body of the sweater, 16 inches 40 cm circulars of the same size for sleeves, smaller size 16 inches 40 cm circular needles for neckband, and smaller needles for working small circumference. That can be DPNs, 2 circular needles of any length, 1 long circular for magic loop, or as in my case, it's those tiny sock needles. We will also need markers, tapestry needle to weave in the ends, there's gonna be quite a lot of them. We will need some waste yarn or stitch holders, and if you will use my cast-on method, you will need a crochet hook of the same size as your main needle. We will start work from the front panel. I use crochet cast-on, but you can totally swap it for different cast-on method. Crochet cast-on though will give you a matching edge to bind off edges. I will briefly demonstrate how to cast on with a crochet hook, but if you need more detailed instructions, you can check out my crochet cast-on tutorial. The link is down below in the info box and in your PDF pattern. To cast on with a crochet hook, first we need to make a slip knot. There are many ways to make one. I do it like that. I tension the yarn between my fingers with the tail end on the thumb, and then I place a crochet hook on top, point it downward, and then bring it up from underneath towards me. That creates this sliding loop of yarn, and then I grab the working yarn and pull it through this loop. This is our slip knot. Adjust it. Now to the actual cast on. Take your needle and place it on top of the yarn but under the hook. To give all of this stability, hold the tail end of the yarn with your thumb against your needle. This is our working position. Crochet cast on is a two-step process. Step 1. Make a stitch. Grab the working yarn and pull it through the loop on the crochet hook. The stitch is done. Here it is on the needle. Second step is to return to the working position. For it, hold your newly done stitch with your thumb. Slide everything to the point of the needle and allow the working yarn to jump off of the needle and get to the back again. Slide away from the point. Repeat those two steps until you cast on as many stitches as you need minus one last stitch. Let's see it again. First step, grab the working yarn and pull it through the loop. Second step, return to the working position. Hold your newly done stitch, slide everything to the point, allow the yarn to get to the back, slide away from the point. In order to make counting this large amount of stitches easier, I use stitch markers. After every 10 stitches, I place a stitch marker on the needle, and it's quite thin, it doesn't get in the way, I just hold it together with my last stitch and continue casting on. That way, I need to count only up to 10 stitches at a time. I casted on almost all stitches that I need, I'm one short. The last stitch you don't need to cast on as all previous stitches. Last stitch is this one on a crochet hook itself. Just transfer it to the needle, remove the hook, and we are ready for knitting. The working yarn is right here, and in the future, if you use crochet cast on, when you look at the right side of your work, the tail is on the left. Markers that were helping me to count stitches I will remove while knitting my first row. Bottom hem is in 2x2 ribbing. Selvage stitches are knitted on the right side of the work and purled on the wrong side. So the sequence goes like this. First row, right side, is knit 1, and then knit 2, and purl 2, knit 2 and purl 2 until one stitch left, knit 1. Turn your work. Wrong side row goes like that. Purl 1 and then knit 2, purl 2 until one stitch left, purl 1. Work 2x2 ribbing until it measures 5 centimeters or 2 inches. Stop knitting after wrong side row. So the next row is on the right side. Next, we need to work 3 rows of plain stockinette. On the right side, knit all the stitches, including the selvage stitches. On the wrong side, purl all the stitches. Work for 3 rows, and on the next row, row number 4, on the wrong side, we will set up for Intarsia pattern. On this row, I will also switch to a straight needle. It's not necessary, I just prefer working Intarsia on a straight needle. Purl the amount of stitches specified for your size. Place marker and purl to the end. Turn work and knit up to the marker. Marker will help to know when to start working in a different color. Since the flower starts closer to the end of the row, it is inconvenient to count all those knit stitches. And now I will show you how to do Intarsia. First, look at your chart. You are starting on the right side row, and we are going to read the chart in that direction, from right to left, just as the knitting goes. But when we will be working wrong side row, we will turn the work, so we should read the chart in opposite direction, from left to right. And for different sizes, charts are different, so don't repeat the number of stitches I'm doing, look at the chart for your size. On the first row of Intarsia, we are attaching new yarns. We need to do the marker. Now remove it. Take the new yarn and tie it to the old one. Just a simple knot. Slide this knot as close to the fabric as possible. Tension the old yarn together with this tail and work with the new yarn as many stitches as in the chart. Next section is again in a background color. Do the same thing. Take new yarn, tie it around old yarn in a simple knot, slide it as close to the fabric as it can get, tension this tail together with old yarn, hold it to your fabric, and knit the rest of the stitches in a new strand of a background color. Every section of the row should have its own strand of yarn. On the next row, wrong side row, we will continue working from the chart, and here is how you should manage transitions between yarns, between colors. Purl to the point where you should change colors. In my chart, the change between colors is not right on top of the previous one, it's one stitch to the side. Sometimes it can be right on top. Sometimes there is a stitch or two in either direction, or sometimes quite a lot of stitches, but in each case the principle is the same. When you're letting go of the yarn you just worked with, and when you're picking up the new yarn, this new yarn should always press the old one to the fabric. Let's see it again. I'm purled to the point where I should switch, and I'm letting go of this old yarn, and I'm picking up new yarn, and this new yarn should hold the old yarn against the fabric, like that. And it works the same on the knit side. This is my old yarn, I'm dropping it. This is my new yarn, and this new yarn should hold the old yarn in place, like that. Let's see it one more time. I'm letting go of this yarn, and I'm picking up this one, and it holds the old yarn to the fabric. I like to use straight needle for Intarsia because I can go back and I just pull on the hanging yarns and it will adjust the tension. The stitches are not sliding off to the cable that is much smaller than the needle, so at any time I can tug on these yarns and they will tighten, but just as much as it's needed, because the needle is always inside of them. And now let me show you how it eventually will look. This is the front. Blocking will help to even out the stitches, and this is the back side of the work. A lot of ends. This is normal, we will deal with them later on. And an example when there is quite a big stretch of stitches before or after color change. When the change is not right on top but several stitches to the side, here's what you should keep in mind. If you just switch the yarns as usual and start working, you risk scrunching up this fabric. So to avoid that, spread the stitches on both needles so they would take up as much space as they would in a finished fabric, and only then work with your new yarn. Now look at the back side. This yarn was all the way over there. We created this horizontal strand and it should accommodate the width of those stitches. Or another option, sometimes where there is really long horizontal jog in pattern, like here, it is easier to just cut the yarn and attach it again in a place where you need it. Now that you understand how to cross the yarns, I have for you a couple of recommendations on how to manage yarns. Just advices. You don't have to do it as I do it. This is what works best for me. I don't try to knit from big balls of yarn. I leave one ball for biggest section of color. For other sections, I use as little yarn as possible. And I personally prefer to just cut off the amount of yarn I need for each section and leave it hanging just like that. Doesn't look pretty, but I leave them as loose threads, not small balls, not bobbins, just loose threads. And when there is a lot of color changes and a lot of those threads, they will become entangled. As a matter of fact, they already are entangled. But if they lose like that, you can easily free the strand of yarn that you need, just by pulling on it. There is no need to detangle all of this, it's okay to have a mess. As for how to judge how much length you need to cut off, look at your chart. Find where the section starts and where it will merge with another one. Guess or count how many stitches in this area. For example, I came here to this segment. It's only a dozen stitches in this segment before it will merge with much bigger one. So I need to cut off just enough yarn for 12 stitches. How do I know how much do I need to cut? I just take my needle, take my yarn and wrap it around 12 times, since I need 12 stitches. This is how much yarn I will need for 12 stitches. To have tails on both ends, I add 30 more centimeters or 12 inches, and this length of yarn will be enough for this segment. When I have such narrow segment like here, but kind of endless, I don't bother to count stitches because this segment will be getting bigger and bigger all the time. I will just cut the length of yarn that I'm comfortable working with. I will cut a couple of meters, enough to knit for some time, and when I will run out, I will attach more. The Intarsia project will have a lot of ends anyway, no matter what you do. So it doesn't matter too much if there will be a couple more ends. But again, I remind you that you don't have to do it like I do it. If you are more comfortable winding those strands of yarn into bobbins, do that. And one last advice. If you do not particularly enjoy working Intarsia itself, if you have spare sets of needles of the same size, cast on for the back panel at the same time. So you can switch between mindless and straightforward knitting and quite intense and sometimes frustrating Intarsia knitting. And for now, you are on your own. Work from the chart up to the neck shaping. Neck shaping starts on the wrong side row that is above the black line in the chart. I'll see you then. I knitted up to the black line in the chart. The row below it was a right side row, and now I'm going to work on the row above the black line. It will be wrong side row. On this row starts neck shaping. For each size, there is a specific amount of stitches that you should purl. After you did that, bind off 14 stitches. You can use any bind off method you like, whichever you prefer. I will use traditional bind off method. For that, purl 2 stitches and then insert left needle into first stitch from left to right, lift it and pass it over the second stitch and off the needle. 1 stitch is bound off. Work another stitch and again insert the needle from left to right into previous stitch, lift it and pass it over the second stitch. 2 stitches are bound off. Work next one, lift and pass over previous stitch over that stitch. 3 stitches are bound off, and continue like that until you will bind off 14 stitches. And try to do it loosely. The knitted fabric shouldn't be scrunched up by your bind off, but this place doesn't need to be stretchy either. Once you bound off 14 stitches, continue working to the end of the row, executing Intarsia pattern. Next row, right side row, knit while doing Intarsia until you get to the bound off section. Now place stitches of other shoulder on hold. Use waste yarn or stitch holder. Tie the waste yarn together for safety. We will work now only on this shoulder. We will continue making our Intarsia flower and at the same time we will shape neck opening on this side. Turn work and bind off 4 stitches. Work 2 stitches, Lift the first stitch and pass it over the second and off the needle. One stitch is bound off. Work next stitch. We bound off 4 stitches. Now continue to the end of the row, executing the Intarsia pattern. We will bind off 4 stitches at the beginning of wrong side row like that 2 more times, and on the next right side row we will continue neck shaping with decreases. On the right side row, knit until there's gonna be 4 stitches left on the needle and do an SSK decrease. An SSK decrease is done like that. Slip 1 stitch as if to knit, then slipped another stitch as if to knit. It was SS of abbreviation, slip, slip, then return them back to the left needle, and now K of the SSK, knit them together through the back loop and knit leftover 2 stitches. Wrong side row are just purled. Continuing Intarsia pattern, of course. Repeat last 2 rows 3 more times. After doing this series of decreases, the neck shaping is done. Continue working on your Intarsia pattern. It will end on a right side row. And then work 2 more rows, wrong side row and next right side row, in just main color. Contrasting color we will no longer need anymore. And after doing 2 rows of plain stockinette after your Intarsia pattern, on the row number 3, it will be wrong side row, we will start shaping the shoulder slope. It is done with German short rows. Purl until there is certain amount of stitches left on the needle. It's different amount for different sizes, for some 6 stitches, for some 7 or 8. Pay attention to the number of stitches for your size. Stop purling and turn work. Now make double stitch. For it, slip this first stitch as if to purl to the right needle, and then take the working yarn and pull on it until the stitch looks like 2 stitches on the needle. Here the stitch will look like that. There's 2 legs and kind of a little knot on top. This is our double stitch. Now place marker on the needle and knit to the end of the row. Next row, purl until a certain amount of stitches, different for different sizes, to the marker, and then turn work. After turning work at the beginning of the next row, again make double stitch. Slip the stitch to the right needle, take your working yarn and pull on it until the stitch looks like there's 2 stitches on the needle. Place marker and knit to the end of the row. Repeat last 2 rows 5 more times. I did all the short rows that I was supposed to, and you can see the shape that it gave the shoulder. And now last row on the wrong side, purl all the stitches. And every time you come across the marker, you will know that the next stitch will be the double stitch you made. Remove marker and work double stitch as 1 stitch. Go under both strands and just purl it as usual. When it's done, cut the yarn, leave a tail for weaving in later, and place stitches of the shoulder on hold. Use waste yarn or stitch holder. And tie the waste yarn for safety. Now we will work on second shoulder. It is done almost the same, only mirrored. First, put stitches back on the needle in a way that the next row will be on the right side. Take new ball of main yarn and at the beginning of the first row bind off 4 stitches, just as we did before. Work 2 stitches lift up the first stitch and pass it over the second and off the needle. One stitch is bound off. Work the next stitch, lift the previous one and pass it over the second. 2 stitches are bound off, and again. Three stitches are bound off. And 4 stitches are bound off. Then knit to the end of the row. Next row, on the wrong side, purl to the end of the row. And then repeat those 2 rows 2 more times. I bound off 4 stitches at the beginning of the right side row 3 times altogether, and now we will continue shaping the neck opening with decreases. First row on the right side, knit 2 stitches, and then knit 2 together, and knit to the end of the row. Next row, wrong side row, is just purled. Repeat previous 2 rows 3 more times, and then work in stockinette for 10 or 12 more rows depending on your size. After that we will shape the shoulder slope with German short rows. Knit until there is a certain amount of stitches left on the needle. It's different amount for different sizes. Then stop knitting and turn work. Now make double stitch. Slip the first stitch to the right needle and then pull on the yarn until the stitch will look like 2 stitches on the needle. Here is 2 legs and this knot thingy is on top. Place marker on the needle and then purl to the end of the row. On the next row, knit until a certain amount of stitches to the marker. Stop knitting and turn work. On the wrong side, make double stitch. Slip the last stitch to the right needle and pull on the yarn until the stitch will look like 2 stitches on the needle. Then place a marker and purl to the end. Repeat last 2 rows 5 more times. I did all the turns and double stitches, and now the last row, knit all the stitches. When you come across a double stitch, you won't miss it, it's right by the marker. Work it together as 1 stitch. Go under both legs and just knit it. And remove all the markers while knitting this row. After that, cut the yarn, but this time leave a long tail, approximately 5 times as long as the shoulder is wide, plus 15 more centimeters or 6 inches for weaving in later. And now place the stitches on hold. Use waste yarn or stitch holder. Tie the waste yarn for safety. The front panel of the sweater is done. Before I will show you how to shape the back panel, let's start on those ends. We need to have them all woven in before we can assemble the body of the sweater. At least I recommend you to do that, so that mess will not get in the way of your further work. The process of weaving in the ends is quite straightforward, if boring. First find the tail that you want to weave in, thread it into tapestry needle. Yellow ends, flower ends, weave into the flower fabric. Just go diagonally, catching those purl bumps, and change direction 1 or 2 times. And cut the rest. Background ends weave into background fabric. Sometimes there's gonna be quite a lot of ends for a little piece of fabric, so they will end up crisscrossing each other. That is okay. Now back panel starts the same as the front. Use the same cast on and then work 2 by 2 ribbon for the same length. Then work in stockinette. In the PDF pattern, you can see number of rows you need to knit. To make counting this large amount of rows easier, I place a removable stitch marker on the fabric after every 10 rows. Or, if you don't want to do that, you can just compare your back panel and the front panel. It doesn't have to be super precise, so hold them to each other and stop knitting the back panel when you get to the start of the shoulder slope. Your last row should be on the wrong side. And now we will shape the neck opening and shoulder slopes at the same time. Row number 1 on the right side. Knit a certain amount of stitches, look for number of stitches for your chosen size, and then bind off 14 stitches. I'm using traditional bind off method again. For it, work 2 stitches, then lift the first stitch and pass it over the second and off the needle. 1 stitch is bound off. Work another stitch, again lift up the previous one and pass it over the last one. Second stitch is bound off. Continue until you bind off 14 stitches. And then knit the rest of the stitches. Turn work. On the next row, on the wrong side, purl to the end. The end now is this bound off section. And then turn work. The stitches on this side are now on hold. You can leave them on the needle, they will not get in the way. It's not necessary to transfer them to the waste yarn or a stitch holder. Now next row, row number 3, at the beginning of the row, bind off 4 stitches. Then knit until on the needle will be left a certain amount of stitches. It's a different amount for different sizes. And then stop knitting and turn work. And now row number 4, make double stitch. Slip the stitch to the right needle and then pull on the yarn until the stitch will look like 2 stitches on the needle. Place marker on the needle and purl to the end. Row number 5, bind off 4 stitches again. Then knit until there is a certain amount of stitches, specific to your size, to the marker. Then stop knitting and turn work. On next row, again make double stitch. Place marker after it and purl to the end. Repeat these last 2 rows one more time. Now we will start making decreases along the neck instead of binding off stitches. Row number 1, knit 2 stitches, then knit 2 stitches together. And then knit a certain amount of stitches, again specific to your size, to the marker and turn work. On the next row, make double stitch. Place marker on the needle and purl to the end. Repeat previous 2 rows 3 more times. And the last row on the right side, knit all the stitches on the needle. Remove all the markers in the process, and when you will come across a double stitch, work it as one regular stitch. This shoulder is done. Now cut the yarn and leave a long tail for seaming the shoulder, at least 5 times as wide as stitches on the needle, plus extra 15 centimeters or 6 inches of tail for weaving in. After that, transfer the shoulder stitches to the waste yarn or stitch holder. And tie the waste yarn for safety. The stitches of the second shoulder move on the needle in a way that your first row will be on the right side. Take new ball of yarn and on the row number 1 on the right side, knit all the stitches. Row number 2 on the wrong side, bind off 4 stitches. Purl first 2 stitches, then lift the first stitch and pass it over the second end of the needle. 1 stitch is bound off. Work another stitch, lift previous and pass it over the next. 2 stitches are bound off, and again, and again. 4 stitches are bound off. Then purl until there is a certain amount of stitches left on the needle. Again, the amount of stitches is different for different sizes. Turn work. Row number 3 on the right side, make double stitch, slip the stitch to the right needle and pull on the yarn to make it double. Place stitch marker on the needle and knit to the end. Row number 4 on the wrong side, bind off 4 stitches again. And then purl until there is a certain amount of stitches left to the marker and turn work. At the beginning of the next row, row number 5, again make double stitch, place marker on the needle and then knit to the end. Row number 6, bind off 4 stitches again and purl until a certain amount of stitches left to the marker and turn work. Row number 7 on the right side, again make double stitch, place marker on the needle, and now from now on we will stop binding off stitches and we'll make decreases instead on the right side of the work. So in this row, knit until there is 4 stitches left on the needle, and now do an SSK decrease. Slip first stitch as if to knit, and then slip second stitch as if to knit, then return them to the left needle and knit them together through the back loops, and knit leftover 2 stitches. Row number 8 on the wrong side, purl until a certain amount of stitches to the marker and then turn work. Repeat last 2 rows 3 more times. And then after that again make double stitch, place marker on the needle and knit to the end. Turn work, and on the wrong side, purl all the stitches on the needle. Remove all markers in the process, and as before, once you encounter on your way the double stitch, work it together as one regular stitch. And now cut the yarn, leave a tail for weaving in later, and place all the stitches on hold. After both front and back panel are done and all the ends are woven in, it is time to assemble the body. I highly recommend to wet or at least steam block the details before doing it. Blocking will make the process easier because it helps with curling of edges. This is before the blocking and this is after. See how much straighter it is. Put panels together so they are right side out. Then place the stitches of both shoulders on the needles, so the point of the needle would be towards the future sleeve. For each shoulder, on one of the panels we left a short tail and on another we left a long tail specifically for grafting. Find this long tail and thread it into tapestry needle. Now set up for grafting. Hold the needles parallel to each other. You can see on the front needle knit stitches and on the back needle purl stitches. Insert tapestry needle with your long tail into first stitch on the front needle as if to purl. Leave the stitch on the needle and pull all the yarn through. Then insert tapestry needle into the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit. Leave this stitch on the needle and pull all the yarn through. This was the setup. Now for grafting itself. Front needle action. Insert tapestry needle into the stitch as if to knit and let it come off the needle. Then insert the tapestry needle into the next stitch as if to purl, leave it on the needle and pull the yarn through. The back needle action. Insert tapestry needle into first stitch as if to purl and let it come off the needle. Then insert the tapestry needle into the next stitch as if to knit, leave it on the needle and pull the yarn through. At first it looks like a loose mess here. It's okay, leave it loose like that. We will come back later and fix the tension across the seam. It is easy to do, but if you pull too tightly, it's much harder to fix. Let's see it again. To help you remember, there is a mantra to it. Front needle knit off, purl on, meaning insert as if to knit and let the stitch come off, then insert as if to purl and the stitch stays on the needle. Back needle, purl off, knit on, meaning insert as if to purl and the stitch comes off the needle, then insert as if to knit and the stitch stays on the needle. If you will get interrupted or distracted in the process, the easy way to know what to do next is to look at your working yarn. If it hangs from the back needle, then it is time to do action on the front needle and do knit off, purl on. If the working yarn comes out of the stitch on the front needle, then it is time to do purl off, knit on the back needle. Repeat the grafting sequence until you will have one stitch on the front needle and one on the back. Then knit off the stitch from the front needle and purl off the stitch from the back needle and pull the yarn through. And now we need to fix the tension across the seam. Go back to the beginning and with the tip of your tapestry needle find your first stitch, lift the first leg of the first stitch and pull up the slack. Then lift the next leg and pull the slack. Then pick up the next leg and pull up the slack, and do it with every stitch one by one, adjusting the stitches until they will look like surrounding stitches. And after the blocking, the fabric will even out even more. Now turn the sweater around and do the same with other shoulder. After grafting both shoulders, weave in the ends that are left. By the way, this grafting of shoulders works in this pattern because it is a pattern for lightweight yarn. And I don't mean just thickness of yarn. Yarn can be thick and light at the same time. But if for some reason you choose to knit with something heavy, like superwash yarn, you can totally bind off the shoulders and seam them. It will add structure and the shoulders will not stretch out under the weight of the sweater, but the finished look will not be the same. Next step is side seams. I always do vertical seams with a crochet hook, so I will demonstrate this method. We will need the yarn, a crochet hook and a stitch marker. The size of the hook is not terribly important here. Good way to judge whether the hook is appropriate is to grab the yarn with the hook, and if it fits here, then it's fine. If it doesn't fit, you need a bigger hook. If there is a lot of space left under the head, get a smaller one. Fold the sweater at the shoulders, so it's wrong side out. Choose one side and align the bottom. Measure from the top of the shoulder as much as you need. For different sizes, it's different amount. Then take a stitch marker and place it through the both front and back panel. We will seam up from the bottom up to this stitch marker. On the first panel, find the first selvage stitch and insert the crochet hook under both legs of it. Then on the second panel, find the first selvage stitch and insert crochet hook again through the both legs of it. Then take the yarn and pull the loop through the both panels. I don't like to leave a tail hanging here, so first several seam stitches I will do with both main yarn and the tail end. It will give a little bit of additional bulk to the seam, but in the ribbon it will not be noticeable. Now find the next selvage stitch and insert the crochet hook under both legs. find corresponding stitch on the second panel, grab the working yarn and pull it through both panels and through the loop on the crochet hook. This is basically the whole process. Insert the crochet hook under the selage stitch on one panel, then on another panel, grab the working yarn and pull it through all of it together. Or if you find it's difficult, like if your yarn is splitty, you can do it in stages. You can pull the yarn through one panel first, then the second panel, and then through the loop on the crochet hook. The tension of the seam depends on the tightness of this loop on a crochet hook. So don't keep it too tight or too loose. The size of this loop should be just enough for it to reach easily up to the next stitch. And it's not a precise science. The front and back details should not necessarily match each other row for row. Like if you were not counting rows and just measured the length when knitting. The details should roughly align. And if you feel like on one detail there's more rows than on another, you can skip a stitch from time to time on a longer panel to compensate. And once you seamed up to the marker, remove it. To finish off the seam, do a crochet chain for several inches. Just pull the working yarn through the loop on the hook repeatedly. Then cut the yarn and pull the tail through the last loop. If you will ever need to disassemble and unravel the garment that is seamed like that, you only need to find this chain and undo the last stitch. Then by pulling on the tail, you can undo the whole seam with one movement. You can leave this chain just hanging here, or you can weave it into the seam like you would do with any tail. Just thread the tail end into tapestry needle and weave it into the selage stitches. You will need to pull a little harder to get the chain to follow through. This is how the finished seam looks from one side, from another, and from the face side. Do the same with the second side of the sweater. Now let's work on the neck. We need to pick up all around the neck opening a certain amount of stitches. To make everything evenly distributed, use stitch markers. At the front here and at the back here, two horizontal bound-off sections. Let's separate those sections with stitch markers. Here is 14 stitches and here is 14 stitches. Altogether 28 stitches already accounted for. Subtract them from the total number of stitches you need to pick up. Then divide the result between those two sections. Then, with the help of stitch markers, divide each section in half. Just eyeball it. Then each of those again divide in half. This is our setup. And then take yarn and circular needle, and starting from this straight back section, pick up and knit 14 stitches here. Pick up a stitch from each vertical column of knit stitches, from under the selage stitch, from one column, from the next, like from the middle of the knit stitch. Not in every hole, but from the middle of each column. On this slanted edge and on the vertical edges, it's more freestyle kind of picking up. Sometimes you will need to skip a stitch, but on this small section it is easier to pick up stitches evenly, since we know that in this section we need, like for example, 12 stitches. Try to maintain a clean line. Pick up under both legs of a selage stitch and don't go further down into the fabric. After all stitches are picked up, remove stitch markers Place one stitch marker on the needle to mark beginning of the round. Then start working in 2x2 rib. Knit 2 and then purl 2 to the end of the round. Repeat this round until ribbon will measure 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Then bind off using Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off method. For that, work first stitch in pattern, it's knit stitch, so knit it. Then to bind off next stitch, which is knit stitch again, do reverse yarn over, meaning that yarn goes from the back to the front, and then knit 1. Then take yarn over and pass it over the last stitch. Then take previous stitch and pass it over the last stitch. The knit stitch is bound off. Next stitch is a purl stitch, and to bind off purl stitch, do regular yarn over, meaning that yarn goes from the front to the back, then purl 1, then take yarn over and pass it over the last stitch, then take previous stitch and pass it over the last stitch. So remember this: before purl stitch, do regular yarn over, purl 1, then pass it over the last stitch, then pass previous stitch over the last stitch. Before knit stitch, do reverse yarn over, and then knit 1, pass yarn over the last stitch, and pass previous stitch over the last stitch. Continue like that until there's gonna be only one stitch left on the needle. Then cut the yarn, leaving a tail for weaving in, and pull this tail through the last loop. To eliminate this gap, thread your tail into tapestry needle, find your first bound off stitch and insert tapestry needle under the both legs of it, and pull the yarn through. Then insert tapestry needle into the middle of the last bound off stitch, right into the center where the working yarn is coming from, and pull the yarn through. Now flip to the inside and weave in this tail into the column of knit stitches. The neck is finished. You can substitute this bind off with other stretchy bind off method if you want. I personally like the effect that those yarn over bumps are creating. It looks like a subtle, delicate ruffle. Also, this method, while being very stretchy, is also very stable. It will never become floppy and wavy with wear. And now let's work on the sleeves. We need to pick up stitches all around this opening. To evenly distribute those stitches, again use stitch markers. One marker place at the top of the shoulder, essentially dividing the sleeve stitches in half. Then divide in half with another stitch marker the front stretch of the stitches. Do the same with the back panel. Now we have 4 even parts. Divide in half each of them. You can measure if you like, I just eyeballing it. Now we have 8 even parts. Take the number of stitches you need to pick up and distribute them between those 8 parts. And this is our setup. And then with your circular needle and new yarn, starting from the underarm, pick up and knit stitches. The number of rows in each section will not match the number of stitches you need to pick up in it, so skip some rows or pick up more frequently if needed to make it work. Maintain a clean line though here. Don't go deeper into the fabric or closer to edge. Once you picked up all the stitches, remove stitch markers and place one of them on the needle to mark beginning of the round. Then work in the round in stockinette until the sleeve reaches the length needed for your size. After you knitted as much as needed for your size, there is some decreases to shape the sleeve. Decrease round goes like that. After beginning of the round marker, knit 1. Then knit 2 together decrease. Just take 2 stitches and knit them together. Then knit until there is gonna be only 3 stitches left to beginning of the round marker. Then do an SSK decrease. Slip as if to knit 2 stitches, return them back to the right needle and knit them together through the back. And knit leftover 1 stitch. After decrease round, knit a certain amount of plain rounds. It is a different amount for different sizes. And this decrease sequence, decrease round plus several plain rounds, you will need to repeat several more times. Again, how many times depends on your size. After the shaping is done, it is time to work on the cuffs. For that, use small-sized needles for working small circumference, 2 short circulars, 1 long circular for magic loop, DPNs, or tiny sock needles. So on the next round, change to smaller needle and work 2 by 2 rib. Knit 2 stitches and then purl 2 stitches to the end of the round. Repeat this round until ribbing will be 2 inches or 5 centimeters. And then bind off using Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind-off method. I showed how to do it on the neck. If you don't want to go back to that place in the tutorial but need a reminder, I will briefly demonstrate it again. To start binding off, work 1 stitch. Then, to bind off a knit stitch, do reverse yarn over, then knit 1, then take yarn over, and pass it over the last stitch, and then take previous stitch and pass it over the last stitch. To bind off a purl stitch, do regular yarn over, then purl 1, then take yarn over and pass it over the last stitch, and then take previous stitch and pass it over the last stitch. Repeating pattern until there is gonna be only 1 stitch left on the needle. Stretch it out. Cut the yarn, pull the tail through the last loop, and the bind off is done. The only thing that is left to do is to get rid of this gap. For that, thread the tail into tapestry needle, find the first bound off stitch and insert the tapestry needle under both legs of it and pull the yarn through. Then insert tapestry needle into the center of the last bound off stitch, right into the place where the working yarn is coming from, and pull the yarn through. Now flip to the inside and weave in the tail into the column of knit stitches. The sleeve is done. Do the second one exactly the same. At the end, if there are any loose ends left on the inside, weave them in and then block the finished sweater. And that's it. Enjoy your Barren Strawberry sweater. Thank you all for watching and I will see you soon. Bye.